But I thought I had this figured out. It's on, okay. I thought you were showing me a switch back there. Well, happy Sabbath, everyone. I'm really glad to be here. I always sense my need for God, especially when I come up before people. It's a really important place to be when you are up before people. I mean, what you say matters. So let's bow our heads and let me pray again. Dear Father in heaven, this morning on this beautiful Sabbath morning here in Northern California, we want to seek you in a way that is closer than ever before. Help us to understand what it is that you want us to do. And Lord, please use me this morning, that whatever I say would be directly from you, and that I could decrease so that you can increase in me. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, I've been really busy this last week, and I was asked a couple of weeks ago, so I have no excuse for not being more prepared. But as the night drew on, have you ever felt like there was, and we all know there's a battle, Christ and Satan, and we're kind of we're in the middle. And have you ever sensed that and felt, wow, this is something beyond me. And you know when the devil is out there trying to discourage you. And as I got closer and closer to this time, and to the time where I knew I need to go to bed, I need to study, it seemed like everything that could go wrong, every kind of problem, neighbor problems, police being called, and all kinds of issues. But I prayed earnestly that God would give me something to share, and I knew that I was asked to share about the Philippines. The difficult thing is I've made 12 trips to the Philippines, and they kind of all go together. I mean, you forget which one is which in the story. So if you don't mind, bear with me and forgive me if some of this doesn't make sense. I'm going to touch on a few highlights. But first, I kind of wanted to, and it kind of explain why I do mission work and why I do what I do. And it's interesting. It's a very special time because I've got some very special people. My daughter, I'm seeing a friend of mine from my childhood here. It's a really neat time. When I was younger, I saw, and I was raised in the Seventh-day Adventist church, I saw a lot of great people. I mean, there was a lot of loving and wonderful memories, but I also saw an intense, argumentative attitude about different beliefs. And as a child, you don't understand what they're saying, but you can understand the way they're acting and behaving. You can understand the body language, if you will. You understand what I'm saying? And so what really made sense to me is not really, and I'm learning now in my 40s, theology is important and what you believe is important. But at the time, I wanted to see it in actions. So one thing that made a lot of sense to me as I read it, and I was 10 years old, Matthew 25, I was excited about that because it's talking about Jesus coming and what we are to do to prepare for that. But later, I found in the book Desire of Ages, the chapter, "To the least of these my brethren," I just wanted to read that to you, and why, so you understand why I am so passionate about what I do. "When the Son of Man shall come in his glory," and this is the first opening verse, "and all the holy angels with him, then shall he sit upon the throne of his glory, and before him shall be gathered all nations, and he shall separate them one from another. Thus Christ on the Mount of Olives pictured to his disciples the scene of that great judgment day, and he represented its decision as turning upon one point." And I thought, wow, I want to know what that one point is. "When the nations are gathered before him, there will be but two classes, and their eternal destiny will be determined by what they have done or have neglected to do for him," Jesus, in the person of the poor and suffering. And I started to really catch on. This is what the gospel is about. Now, you're going to always find a lot of people out there that are going to either say, well, you're doing this for works, or you're doing this for this reason. I mean, people can be discouraging no matter what you do. But to me, this was really what was important. And he goes on to say, and this was interesting to me, in that day, Christ is not present before men the great work he has done for them on the cross, or by giving his life for their redemption. He presents the faithful work that they have done for him. So it wasn't so much about arguing, it was about going out and doing something for the people. So I started doing mission work in the United States in my own way and an understanding. And it started developing. Someone gave me a set of cassettes. It's what we had back then by Moody Bible, Dr. James Dobson. Love Must Be Tough, because they felt like I was enabling people. Well, that was very helpful, and I went through this phase of getting pretty tough on people. But then I came across something really wonderful in a book called Ministry of Healing. And of course, I've heard of that book all my life, and I've read it. It was basically about health. I even got a condensed version of it, and the chapter that is so meaningful to me was taken out to condense it. It's working for the intemperate, working for the poor. So I'm going to read just a little bit of that. It really helped give me a direction and perspective. Every true reform has its place in the work of the gospel and tends to the uplifting of the soul to a new and nobler life. Everywhere they should present to the people the principles of true temperance and call for sinners to the temperance pledge. Earnest effort should be made in behalf of those who are in bondage to evil habits. There is everywhere work to be done for those who through intemperance have fallen. These poor souls feel that they are without hope, either for this life or the life to come. The hearts of the parents are broken. Men speak of these erring ones as hopeless, but not so does God regard them. He understands all the circumstances that have made them what they are, and he looks upon them with pity. This is a class that demands help. Never give them occasion to say, no man cares for your soul. Some who were once in positions of wealth are without home, without friends, in suffering, misery, disease, and degradation. They have lost their self-control. Unless a helping hand is held up to them, they will sink lower and lower. With these self-indulgences it is not only a moral sin, but a physical disease. Often, in helping the intemperance, we must, as Christ so often did, give first attention to their physical condition. They need wholesome, unstimulating food and drink, clean clothing, opportunity to secure physical cleanliness. They need to be surrounded with an atmosphere of helpful, uplifting Christian influences. This is what really touched me. I know we're supposed to live in the country, and I agree with that, and I have our country home for our family. But it says right here, in every city a place should be provided where the slaves of evil habits may receive help to break the chains that bind them. Strong drink is regarded by many as the only solace in trouble, but this need not be. If, instead of acting the part of the priests and Levites, professed Christians would follow the example of the Good Samaritan, in dealing with the victims of intemperance, we must remember that we are not dealing with sane men, but with those for the time being are under the power of a demon. Be patient and forbearing. Think not of the repulsive, forbidding appearance, but of the precious life that Christ died to redeem. As a drunkard awakens to a sense of his degradation, do all in your power to show that you are his friend. And this is what was quite a big contrast to the Moody Bible Institute's ideas, and I'm not saying they're all wrong, but this really touched me, and it really helped me to, and of course I had to die to myself quite a bit, because when people make choices that are so ridiculous and crazy and life-threatening, destroy everyone around them, you tend to really want to get angry. And this is a sin of mine that I constantly struggle with. But it says, speak no word of censure. Let no act or look express reproach or aversion. Very likely the poor soul curses himself. Help him to rise. Speak words that will encourage faith. Seek to strengthen every good trait in his character or her character. Teach him how to reach upward. Show him that it is possible for him or her to live as to win the respect of his fellow men. Help him to see the value of the talents which God has given them, but which they have neglected to use. Isn't that beautiful? So it really has helped me, and that's kind of the direction and the information that I'm using to be able to keep going forward. But doors started opening up to go into other countries. And so when I was at a very difficult and low point in my life, I had prayed this particular night earnestly that God would do something. I mean, have you ever felt like it's just too much for you to bear? And this particular night was like that. I was down in Riverside, California. I was getting ready to do some health lectures. And I said, God, why don't you send me to another country? Maybe that would help me out. Well, at 7 o'clock in the morning, it was pretty shocking to me. I was woken up, actually. I was sleeping in the back of my Mercury Sable station wagon. It was kind of a rough area of the city. And I answered it half awake, and it was a Filipino man who I had met at a health crusade. And he said, would you like to go to the Philippines? So I said, yes, I would. And I was surprised. I went to the University Travel in Loma Linda. I booked my flights, called him back, and he paid for them. And he sent me over there. So the Philippines has about 7,206 islands. There's almost 100 million people in that country. It's pretty much a Catholic nation. And, God has asked us to preach the gospel to all the world, right? And that is a commission. We're asked to do that. So a lot of people say, well, how do you fund it? How do you do it? Maybe I'm always going to have a lot of people that disagree with me and think that I'm just completely radical and off the deep end. But when God asks me to do something, I don't ask how I'm going to do it. I just go forward and try to do it. And if I fail, if I die, so be it. I want to be able to do the best I can. So I've made a few trips there on one-way tickets with no money. And I think my mother kind of wanted me, she said, son, why don't you share the story of your last trip? Because I did go on a one-way ticket, and I didn't have any money. But to tell you about that story and kind of explain why I went, I have to go back to the trip prior to that. My son and I, I'm watching the clock, here, got enough time. My son and I, he said he had been to the Philippines once with me, but he said, Dad, I really want to go on another mission trip. He was 15 years old. I started telling him, well, if you can sell the jet ski, it's 1100cc Yamaha. It was getting us into some trouble because we're on a slow fishing village island, Molokai. People didn't like that. It wasn't illegal, but they tried to, make it illegal, and they just would do everything to get us tickets and stuff like that. So I said, well, if you can sell that, then we can use the money, if it's enough. Well, interestingly enough, he had been looking for tickets, and he found some tickets that were very cheap. And that same day, a man came by, and he came in and said, hey, would you like to sell the jet ski? It was sitting out front. And I said, well, if we sell it for enough to get tickets to the Philippines, yes, we would. So Brendan, my son, went online and looked for tickets for both of us round trip. This was a round trip time. He found some, and so we told the guy, okay, they're this much. This is what we need. He had all but a couple $100 of that amount in his pocket, and I said, well, we can't do it. So he rushed to the neighbor, someone he knew, and he borrowed the money and paid us. We rushed down to the bank, put it in so that my son was tinkering with the website of the airline so it would stay active, so we could get that price. So he bought it, and we went over. Now, that was November 24, 2009. What we didn't know was November 23, 2009 was the country's, if I can say this right, it was the worst criminal event outside of any sort of a war that had happened in the history of the Philippines. It was a massacre of a group of people who were going to vote for their favorite. It was during election time. And so these people were headed to the voting polls, and they were held up by gunpoint, driven to a location where there was an excavator. They were all shot, and cars pushed into the hole and buried. A lot of people. We arrived, I saw the newspapers, and it was quite gruesome because they don't have the same laws that they have there as they do here for showing things on television and the newspaper. I thought, well, it's just another day in the Philippines. So my son and I, we had miracle after miracle, and I'm trying to make this quick, but we went to see one of the orphanages that I had built about 10 years earlier, because that's right outside of Manila. in a minute here, is there going to be pictures here and I can come down here? Is that how it's going to work?
Yeah.
Okay. Do that. I'm supposed to, so I'll come down here. Is that okay? Behind me. So I'll show you some pictures. Now, I put these pictures together after midnight this morning, and I put them in order. They went out of order. So I deleted the file, I put them in order again, and they went out of order. So I'm sorry that they're not all totally in order. But we got to a location in a very, very crowded area of Manila where I had built this small orphanage that has continued and run there. We always hope that people will become Seventh-day Adventists, but we're not there to force them. It's the Holy Spirit. And so little by little, as we've sent some of the kids to Adventist school, whenever it goes here, okay, but we went there, and I took some pictures of the kids that were there. I was interested because they had grown up. One of the oldest, the 13-year-old, go back here. Where do I point this up here?
What are the computers?
Point at the computer, okay.
Go back.
There we go. Okay, so I'll leave it right there. So I took some pictures of these kids, and there was a lot of garbage. This is a squatter area that the pictures were taken. I don't have those pictures up here, but I sent those to my mother and my sister and another man who I had just met through an advertisement of selling some land out of Reading. And it was quite interesting because, and this is a story I've hardly shared, but it's kind of so amazing even to myself. I'm still in shock over it. He was interested in buying this land, but not really sure. But when he saw these pictures, he said to his wife, "Hey, hon, the guy that owns the land is in the Philippines." Well, she was very interested because she's Filipina, as we say. And so she came over, and as he opened the attachment, she wanted to see the picture. And as the picture came up of the children, she recognized them as her family. Now, these were all Catholics. They were Catholic. She was Catholic. And I think about the millions of people there, the millions of people here. It's quite a miracle. And so he decided to buy the land, and within a day, he had put all the money I needed in my account and purchased the land. Actually went through the title company. So I had all the money I needed to work with my son and I for quite some time. I'm going to just insert a little thing here because it just shows how God works. I'm not saying that I'm special, that there's anything supernatural, except Jesus is working supernaturally. People always ask, how do you do this? I really don't know, except I can just tell you what happened. People wonder, how did you start the place in Ohio, where my mother is right now in Russell? Well, later, that man that bought the land and his wife, they owned a house back there. And because of what I did 10 years earlier for their cousin's children and building this orphanage, they donated this house to us back in the East Coast near Cleveland. So for 3 years it's been run as a shelter for families and mothers with children. So that's all I know how that happened. It was given to us because they wanted to give it to us. Now back to the Philippines, we went then to this little island, and elections and things got really, really difficult. We got a text message which was kind of disturbing, but only because someone was dying. And when someone's dying and they're pleading for your help, you want to go and help them. And I didn't know, it's hard to know. You pray, and they said, Lord, and I even videotaped what I was thinking at the time, and should I go to this island? Should I do it? Because there were a lot of traps being set for people back then. The country had gone into, parts of it went into martial law. And I started telling Brendan, maybe we should build a boat. So we started building a boat. And this boat, we designed it to be a lot higher advanced than the boats that were there. Flat bottom, an engine, 16 horse instead of the 5-horse Briggs, and we went with Honda. We did a lot. We put fiberglass all around it, modified it, made it really, really fast. And that boat later came in handy. But we went to the island. We helped this elderly lady. We gave money. We paid her caregiver. We paid for her hospital bills. And later she died in the hospital. I went to the funeral. everything was, people were crying, but we didn't think anything of it until we got to the airport and we were trying to leave and we were arrested. We were very hungry, we were very thirsty. It was a very difficult time because we had traveled a long ways from the smaller islands to get to Manila, and we were trying to go through the immigration. We had waited on water because we thought once we get through, then we're going to spend money on our airport tax and then be able to get through, and then we'll buy water and food. So we got up really early, went to bed late that night, and just had skipped drinking water and eating and stuff. So we were at the point of faint. So when we were arrested and then put in this room, we didn't know anything what it was. I was thinking, what am I getting my son into? And then you start thinking, okay, is this God's will? Maybe it's true what people are saying. They said, don't go to that island. Don't go help that lady. Don't go, this is a trap. You start having all kinds of things go on in your mind. When they presented the paper to show what I was charged with, I was quite shocked because it was very big, bold, capital letters, homicide. We were being investigated for homicide. So it was a long ordeal. My son escaped the country in 6 months. I escaped a year later, but with kind of an exoneration from the country that I was willing to hold out and allow them to process all the documents and the paperwork, and found out that it was fraud and a case of extortion where someone was trying to get money. And it was the family that I helped with the elderly lady that died in the hospital. That was the shocking thing. The people that I helped went after me to extort money and caused almost my death and the loss of several properties and homes. So I told the conference there, I said, if I get a letter from you inviting me back, if I get a letter from immigration promising me that they're not going to create any problems for me, I will come back, but not until that happens. So I got the letter from the conference, but I kept on telling them, no, I need a letter from immigration. So I got a letter from immigration finally. I got 2 letters. So I decided, since this was a sign and it's God's will, I would go on a one-way ticket and just trust God. I got 5 minutes. So here's a few pictures that I'll share with you. I went there and we needed a vehicle. So I walked all over the town 4 hours from this island trying to find a vehicle. I couldn't find any, but I did find one, but it wasn't for sale. And the man was a Jehovah's Witness. And so after like 10 Bible studies with him, and I just let him talk to me, I didn't argue with him about anything. Finally he said, I'm going to sell you my car. Well, he decided to sell it to me for just like a little bit of pocket change down, and he gave me the key, and he said, when you can pay me, I'll give you the title. So my dear son Brendan worked hard over here, and he sent money over, and it wasn't very much money. Prices are much cheaper there. So the cars it's a 550cc engine, but I can put 30 people in it and drive around. I bought a couple motorcycles in the past, and so I have 5 motorcycles there, or the mission does, or the people. I put them in their names, the Adventist lay workers and pastors. This is one of them. They're way cheaper there because it's the #1 consumer of motorcycles, I think, in the world. But one of the problems with the motorcycle is you can't fit anything on. They fit a lot of people, and I've got some pictures to show you. But I'm having plastic bags and suitcases, and even carrying my projector, laptop, sound equipment. I brought all my sound equipment over. And so I started thinking in my mind, I need to design some accessories to be able to help. And I put on the vehicle, Healthy by Choice, Not by Chance, on the side, AY Baol, which is Adventist Youth Baol. That was the little village I was working on. On the back, I put Jesus is Coming Soon. And I actually built a little apartment in there. So I had a restroom and a kitchen and everything. So where I went, I would sleep in different villages that I was working at, and I would hear them, they would read everything. Jesus is coming soon. And it would kind of wake me up because they're reading it in English and out loud. Healthy by choice, not by chance. And I have the little chip program logo there. The children really make it a blessing. This little boy down to the little boy at the bottom there, he's 5 years old, Brycey, was the shock of everyone, and myself included, because he ended up being my main evangelist speaker. I decided, I mean, I could do it, but they didn't understand the English too well. I learned a little of the other language, Visaya language, and I knew Tagalog. But this boy preached. I couldn't believe it. And he preached Visaya with English. And if you ever want to type in my name in YouTube, Stephen Jenkins, boy preacher, got 2 minutes. You can see him preaching, and everyone was silent when he preached, and there were tears in their eyes, so I don't even know everything he was saying, but when he spoke in English, I knew. I found a beautiful piece of property I purchased for our little health place where people can go to learn about health, and of course they're not in order, so this is one of the little churches, Adventist churches, and our lay evangelist worker that I worked with, did crusades with. It's very beautiful. Churches are right on the beach sometimes, and we have Sabbath school right on the beach. You can see the island there. That's the island I worked at, and I've been by here. I wanted to take a picture of this, but I never had the time. I was just going by to go with 1,000 missionaries. This is the box that I designed for the backs of the motorcycles. It comes off and on, and I had it painted and made it look nice so it fits. But it's waterproof, and it was very difficult. It took me about 3 months of different trials to come up with something that could go through the monsoon rains and be completely waterproof. Plus, I put my keyboard on the top, have my laptop, food, and everything. And it worked out really well. It's the only one like it on the entire area. Like I say, Manila has like 25 million people about in Manila. And that's the squatter area that I worked in. The houses go up. Some houses are only about 3 feet wide, and they have like 5 stories. This is what I was talking about, the motorcycles. It's bamboo and tarp and wood, and they fit a whole bunch of people on it. And to me it's very dangerous, but I fit 6 or 7 people. The islands are very small, even though there's 7,000. You can see how small they are with the airport. And during the time there, it's a baptism, we baptized with the lay workers and with the help of my sound equipment and the vehicles and going around to the villages, about 225 souls were baptized. And here's some of we had a camp meeting, and that was a wonderful time. This is the same, This is the camp meeting we did, got all the churches together. Just love the youth. They love to do all kinds of things. And we always have to keep, this girl was such a wonderful experience. We started branch Sabbath schools in different villages where they were all Catholic. And this was a family of about 12 kids with a mom and dad. And she was one that said, I want to become Seventh-day Adventist. And she was so excited about her newfound faith, and the family weren't too happy. But she just loved coming to the different events and the camp meeting. And here's our literature evangelist worker there. And this is out on low tide looking back at the camp meeting. And thank God, praise God, a lady in California helped to purchase some of the rice fields there so we could put up those little nipa huts, we call them. And leaving and coming back, I stopped at the Literature Ministry Seminary and was their guest speaker for their graduation. And one of our literature evangelists from Bilaran, the island I was at, was graduating there. So that was kind of my departure. Now I was told, you can put this up, I was told I'm supposed to go into the youth, but is that still on? I'm supposed to do, if there was youth, I've got my daughter here, and there's the youth back here. Is there still time for the youth? The bulletin said I'm supposed to do a share for the youth. Okay. Well, you know, I forgot one thing about the Philippines. There were times